Welcome to the Cutting Edge podcast. My name is Mbuso Radebe, and I am a Senior Program Manager for Edge Growth Solutions, which specifically focuses on SME development programs. Today we'll be tackling Township Economy. I've got my guest today, Sifiso Moyo, who will help us to just discuss further some of the innovations around the township, but most importantly, firstly giving us a snapshot around township economy.
Okay.
But most importantly, there's a work that you've done around the white paper that you've done on township economy.
Yeah.
So it will be important to just give us a view around the research work that you've done as a snapshot of the township economy.
Yeah. Okay. No, thank you so much, Mbuso, for having me in this podcast. I really appreciate it a lot. You're completely right. I think where we can start with the township economy is that we can't separate the rural economy, the small dorp economy, and also the township economy. They are some kind of intertwined because there's a history that anchors the township economy. Because if we can look at the township economy, I think there's a book that I'm currently reading. It says the journey of the Soweto entrepreneur since 1905. And it tells you that, if we look at the migration culture and what has happened in the apartheid era, and why do we see sectors like the retail sector being dominant in the township economy, it is because of those special planning and also some of, regulatory issues that were attached during those times, where we were basically confined in those spaces, and the only place we would go and shop was Joburg CBD. Therefore, hence, you would see that the township economy started to emerge, and entrepreneurs started to kind of come into, trading in that environment. Probably around, during the NAFCOC emergence. And entrepreneurs like Bomaponya, like Mr. Shabalala, if you can follow their story, you realize that they had to basically push against all odds and make sure that, they are able to trade and be able to supply goods to their people that were living in the township. So if you think about it, what was the most low-hanging fruits at that time? It was retail. And hence you would see that there is a lot of prominence in retail that is attached to the township economy. But also I think if you look also back in how the evolution has gone and how the special planning and the apartheid system, you'll realize that some of the products that we have, like Maheu, migrant workers, came with those products in modern townships. And those products basically have been kind of ring-fenced by big commercial food companies, and they've been their number one brand. So there are a lot of IPs that comes from the township that have been commercialized, because at that time we had a system that couldn't allow us as entrepreneurs, to fully explore and exploit that economy. And hence, in the book, in the white paper, it's called the Township Jive.
Yeah.
So the Township Jive reflects basically on the perspective of an insider. Constantly hear those that come outside of the environment, looking in and basically analyzing the environment. And I think there's also a narrow view of how they are analyzing the environment, because they are trying to quantify, the value of certain sectors and the value of certain businesses and the value of certain products. But I think the snapshot and the deep dive on the white paper basically reflects on the role players, the ecosystem, and also the composition and the characteristics of the township economy in this modern time. And also it reflects on the history of the evolution of townships. But we also look at various sectors and various case studies, but most importantly, we look at an ideal euphoria situation of certain sectors in the township that anchors the township, like the transport industry, like the property industry, and also some of kind of manufacturing industries that are there that are in a micro scale. And then it also unpacks the TIDA Act. And I think, when we look at the TIDA Act, the Township Economy Development Act by Gauteng, I think that mission started back in 2014 with the Township Revitalization Strategy that was put by MMC Maile, who's back as an economical development MMC for Gauteng again. And I think that mission basically was to say, how do we better narrow down, how do we kind of zoom into the township, but most importantly, how do we redress some of the regulatory issues like the bylaws for informal traders? What does that mean? How does the future of the township in terms of, infrastructure development looks like? And if we look at the city of Johannesburg back in 2001, when Mr. Masondo was the mayor, he came up with what we call the SDI, the Soweto Development Initiative. And as a result of that, we can see precincts like Vilakazi emerging, the investment of the Lesedi Group emerging, and that you could see in Soweto, you can see in Vosloorus, in the East Rand. But yeah, the township economy, I think for me, if we look at major townships and big township, because one of the biggest townships is Soweto, seconded by Tembisa and Mamelodi. And those have been kind of the focus areas, either in my study and in other studies that I've done. And some of the research that I've done recently, it was not back, it's around June. It was looking at the backyard real estate market and the emergence of it, but also looking at legislation from a municipality level, the limitations, and comparing, Ekurhuleni municipality and Soweto to look at, not Soweto, City of Johannesburg, to look at the fluidity and the adaptability of those legislation. And with the Act, we are seeing, a lot of fund being ring-fenced for investment in the township. But I guess, in the snapshot that is what I can be able to kind of build a context for you around the township economy.
That's very interesting, specifically around the history around township economy, because I think a lot of us do not have that history around township economy. But if we can dive deep into some of the challenges that SMEs are facing in the township, I think it will be very interesting for us to just unpack what are those challenges, and does a township type of an entrepreneur face similar challenges as what we call an urban type of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so challenges, I think the best answer that I can give you for that question is that we kind of have to also understand that we either a first generation or a second generation of entrepreneurs in the context of the township. And we are starting to see the fruits of those that had gotten the opportunity post 1994 and that are basically leading the pack this year. I think there's a lot of resilience in the township environment. There's a lot of innovation that exists there. People are self-funding themselves. There's a lot of Stockfell crowdfunding approach that is being used now. And I think that really talks to the finance element, but also the investment ready element that exists within township businesses, because I think, we have a lot of issues when it comes to basically understanding the concept of business, operationalizing the business, and what does scaling look like. And I think the conversation will always be anchored around finance. And I think for us, that is not where we should start. And a lot of entrepreneurs talks a lot about the finance element, but if we deep dive into their businesses, we realize that there are a lot of gaps that exist there. Even those that have made it, big brands that have kind of been stalwarts in the township environment that have scaled, you realize that issues like, a succession plan is not something that is in place. Value chain development is not something that is in place. Streamlining distribution in the spaza market. If we look at spazas, for example, let's zoom into that sector, the retail market. We see a lot of dominance of foreign nationals, and I think the success of it stems from an aggregation approach and a collaborative mindset. And I think if we look at how we are kind of wired, those that have grown up in the township, collaboration has continuously become a taboo. I think we collaborated from a perspective of addressing issues that were affecting us during the system part. But now I think we've kind of been fragmented a lot, and we are kind of individuals in our own spaces as intermediaries and ESOs. They're in that environment. But the challenge is that there is a cry for a market, but I kind of don't believe that the issue is the market. I think, what is the issue is that we need to kind of re-engineer these businesses and also kind of find a way to streamline value chain, cut their cost so that they can become profitable businesses. They just need guidance, and I think central to it is mentorship. I think that's what is central in the development of a small business that exists in the township. But business is there, the market is there, people are there, and I think it's just a matter of, how do we club together and kind of use formulas that we can see that are working. And also, there's a lot of low self-confidence that exists in township entrepreneurs. And also the notion of thinking that products that we developed, are meant to be ring-fenced for the township. And if you continuously read the narrative, in the book that I just referred, it's an opportunity for us to be integrated into the mainstream economy. And I think such products like, the unorthodox products, this is a township IP, the Soweto Lager, by Sakumzi. It does not necessarily mean that these products are developed for township. It just means that these products are IPs that comes from the township that can be exported or integrated into the mainstream economy. So I think it's just a mindset that we need to kind of talk to. But also I think some of the opportunities there that exist is something like a catalytic funding. Catalytic funding will play a major role in scaling up enterprises, because we do have businesses that by themselves have actually kind of created a semi-franchise model. And they've spread around in various townships. But systematically and streamlining the value chain and making sure that they have processes and system, there is no knowledge that exists and that a system in that. And also there should be a sector-focused approach. If we think we're going to be able to address the issues of township economy from a perspective of a kind of a broader approach, I don't think we will win. And hence, the white paper really focuses on sector solutions, reconfiguring, an example, a taxi industry, the funeral industry. If you look at the cascading effect or the impact that it has, it talks to the eventing, business. But you realize that issues like service delivery, electricity, etc., if those things are not sorted out, it still affects, the scaling up of the market itself. Because the challenge is not the trade sometimes. It is the fact that there's no electricity. It's the fact that there's no water. And we can go all the way to Standard 10. If you can go to Standard 10 now in the township in Standard 10, there's water shedding every day. There's no water. There's a business there that does ice. There is a market that they are supplying, which is the foreign nationals. And they can't meet the demand. There is a product. They can't meet the demand because the issue there is that they have water shedding. So they can't supply the ice. So those are issues that collaboratively with municipalities, if we want to see the success of the township economy, we also have to find a way to address those issues. Why service delivery is a threat? It threatens business. But also I think we shouldn't attach limitations of the township economy or the challenges of the township economy and the notion of saying crime is an issue. Partially crime, it is an issue, but I mean, it can be addressed. There are ways to address such things. But I think the service delivery is central in affecting, the development of this economy.
There has been a lot of solutions specifically coming from government in terms of a number of programs that the government has started through their agencies.
Yeah.
On top of that, you also have a lot of organizations that are supporting SMEs, giving support to township entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Do you think that is working? And where are the gaps still? And as Edge, it is important for us to really understand where the gaps are in the township and not either duplicate the efforts that are being done already in the township,
True.
but really try and make sure to make an impact, because we are all about impact. So it would be interesting to understand from the solutions that are available, what more that still needs to be done.
Thanks for that question. There is what we call a TRAP program, that focuses on retail. There are other initiatives that have been put out spearheaded by the Gauteng Economic Development. But the only issue that exists there is that you can't publish a policy and also be the implementer of the policy through your agency. So for me, that is my kind of first contention point, because you are implementing initiative in isolation of intermediary organization that exist in the township. I call them the aggregators.
Yeah.
If you look at the aggregators, they have substantial amount of entrepreneurs that they are supporting voluntarily. It's either they organize summit, networking session, they connect these guys to the market, but they are doing it in isolation or out of support of government. Maybe let's take a simple example. If you look at the social development, for example, every year they call for NGOs to apply for funding that is available so that they can be able to address social issues in communities. I see something like that the government needs to do. You have to put away some budget so that you incorporate intermediaries and ESO organizations that are based in the township to actually be the implementers of the initiatives that you have as government.
Yeah.
That is the biggest mistake. I mean, even corporate does that. They come into the environment in isolation of the intermediary organization. And I don't think we'll realize the full potential of the township economy if we are working, it seems like we are working against, intermediaries. So for me, I think there should be a fund set up, deployed to intermediary organization, because first of all, they need to be sustained. You realize that intermediary organization now goes to corporate companies and ask for sponsorship to do events. That's the only way that they can be able to attract capital. Yeah. But if there is a set capital and a clear mandate of deliverables that will be given to them, I think the environment and the ecosystem can have some kind of fluidity. But at this current moment, I mean, we are held at ransom, right? It's either you are aligned with their strategic objective, which sometimes is not quite clear what they want and what they are looking for. And sometimes our government is responsive. It's a responsive government. If there's a problem, they respond to the problem. Anything that is addressed from an intermediary standpoint about the issues of what we are currently seeing with, the turmoil that is happening in the township currently. I mean, the death of 12 kids that we've been talking about. And if we can dig deeper there, there are opportunist organization that comes in and say, we want to push a mandate of saying, let the foreign national leave because they are poisoning our kids.
Yeah.
For me, it does not make sense, because if you dig deeper into the issue, you realize that we have a problem, that the township in its composition, it's highly dense. There's an opportunity of rats. And if I own an outlet, which is a spaza shop, I sell food, it is a haven for rats. So how do I then try to address the issues of rats, I will put a bit of poison, rat poison there and there. And of course, they are residual that will, affect the food. But also we have to look at who is supplying them. Why are they being supplied food that will expire in 2 weeks' time? So who is responsible for that, And we then create a division where there are intermediaries that are pro of saying, okay, let's fix this economy a bit. But they are also, the township is highly politicized. And if it's highly politicized, anyone that is looking to score points around, kind of destabilizing, will catch on the opportunity.
Yeah.
So for me, I think, if I think about, some of the initiatives, I think, if Ed Growth want to enter that market, get to read the white paper, get to read also other literature that is out there around the context of the township economy. And of course, there are books that have been published by Gigi and Yobulelani. They are actually role players also in that space in terms of the ecosystem. But I think for me, I would aggregate all intermediaries, put them in one room, and then say, let's have a conversation about the township economy. Let's hold a township economy summit. And the context of what the township economy summit looks like, it's like a combination of an award ceremony and a talk shop. So a lot of people basically come there and we talk about the stats. We all know that it's a 900 billion economy. We all know that it's 150 billion informal sector that is there. We all know that the spaza market is close to about 300 billion rand. Those are figures that have been collected by FMCG market because that is a lucrative space for them. But we need a sector-based research that will look at the funeral sector. What are the problems? And I'll give you one example of what is the problem with the funeral sector. No storage for bodies. They use these luxury cars. There is an opportunity for a hiring system. There's also an opportunity for them to supply their own petroleum products, And it's similar to the taxi industry, and it's similar to the property industry. There is technology that is out there from a modular building of properties and backyard, but it's called alternative building technologies. Yeah, that's what they're called. And that can be able to address the housing backlog that we have in the township and multiple things. So solutions are there, entrepreneurs are there, but we are not listening to them, or we choose not. And we are saying to ourselves, because we want to keep ourselves busy as government or whoever we are, we then want to be the implementers of a policy. You are bound to be biased. You are bound to bring your friends who will then be the one that will benefit from that. So there is that issue that we have to find a way to address. But there is also, I think FMCG is trying their level best, but also, they're in business. So there should be organization like Edge that will come with solution like catalytic funding, and look at the matured businesses. And then if you bring in catalytic funding, and I'll give an example, like the Sakumzi brand. Sakumzi brand started in Vilakazi Street. Yeah. They now have 3 outlets, and they are looking to go to Durban and Cape Town. And those are basically some of the entrepreneurs that have succeeded in this market. That first of all, we have to look at them and say, how do we inject catalytic funding here to make sure that they scale? And then how do we then bring intervention that talks to how do we make sure that they become a franchisable business? Because some of the things is that we don't know. It's like if we can look at the spaza market and look at the local spazas, for example. One of the biggest issues is streamlining the value chain. They are looking to set up their own distribution center, but they are failing because there is no knowledge, and also they don't have the systems. So such interventions, will really bring about bigger impact in us fully realizing the township economy and the monster that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you are touching on a lot of solutions, which is what mostly we are looking for rather than always dwelling on the problem. I think it's also important to maybe if you can give us some more snapshots around the innovations in the township, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs that are doing amazing things in the township that are not known. So maybe if you can just take us through some of the innovations that are happening in the township.
So innovations will always be inspired by sectors. We know that the biggest sector outside of the spaza economy is a retail, it's a hospitality sector. And one of the innovation is the product that is here on the table, you know, by the unorthodox guy. I mean, if you look at how big is the informal nyama yenhloko market, you know, it is populated across every corner. And if we zoom in into that product on its own, you realize that in a day, those guys, they're making close to about 3,000 to 4,000 rand. And they're informal and they don't pay for any overheads. And they are there. And there is a lot of them. And then you realize that there is this one particular source that they buy. And they can only find it in some of the shops that are in Lenasia, because there is production that is happening there. During the apartheid time, those were areas that were permitted to actually produce products. So if you look at that, and then you realize that, I need to drive if I have to have this delicacy if I'm coming from the township and I'm living in the suburban areas. And here's a gentleman, Chef Phil, who has come up with this brilliant concept to say, let me take the products, let me freeze it, because there is a market of ready to eat in South Africa that is growing. Of course, in countries like the UK, it's a quite big sector. And they've packaged this product and they've made them to be available in mainstream retail. So it's partially the innovation of taking the very same product, freezing it, making sure that you preserve the taste, making sure that you prepare it or you actually do it in a market, in an environment, a manufacturing environment that is compliant, etc. Another one is a business that does prosthetics that I've kind of met. It's in Soweto. They operate in a very nice small garage. And the innovation is also how they are selling the product, you know, how they are collaborating with Bara and private hospital, finding a subsidy model and selling, you know, the prostate at a very marginal cost because they know that they are quite expensive. So there are all these products that are there, and there are all these entrepreneurs that are there in that market. And I mean, the tourism market, for example, I mean, there are products that these guys come up with. Like now there's a cutting business that ferries, you know, some of the tourists and show them the entire Soweto. They have considered sustainable cars, etc. So there is a sense of awareness, and people are quite aware of what is happening in the world. There is a small enterprise that is looking at microgrid solutions because there are issues that we have with electricity in the township. And they've come up with this concept where they station a microgrid in one space full of batteries. And then on each house, they've put a solar panel because they know that if you had to put that entire system, there is a sizable amount of money that you need to part with, above 50,000 sometimes. And what they have done with this concept, you know, which is still on the, they call themselves energy. While it's still in a very small scale, they're still looking to do it. But the idea I like, because they are saying, let's put a panel of solar in every house and then connect all the panels in one single, you know, line and then automate the system. Because in the township, we have child-headed household. I can't afford electricity, or I'm not subsidized by the municipality. And the technology allows you, you know, to, when a house switch off because of electricity issues. So all the panels are collecting the energy, they are storing it in the battery. The automated system basically deploy electricity in a house where there's no electricity for that time. And if there is probably load shedding for 2 hours, 3 hours, they can deploy from that microgrid. What does that do? I mean, if we look at ESCOM, the prices are really expensive. I mean, ESCOM now has just kind of asked for a price increase.
Yeah.
And if we look at the township, as much as we are saying we are subsidizing it, but there has been punitive measures that have been undertaken now. We find homes and spaces that have been switched off for almost 6 months, and they're telling you that you need to put out 6,000 rand so that you can address the issues of debt that you have. I mean, there's no way that the township will not be on fire. There's no way that things will not be what they are. So there are solutions that are out there, and there are companies that are looking to address on those solutions. So there is innovation, and those are sectors that I see. I mean, the solar sector, the energy sector. We have seen it with street lights. We have seen it with the geysers, where government has been very instrumental in driving that. And now a private company is coming with those solutions, but we need capital that could back up some of those innovations.
Given that there's so many innovations that are happening in the township, and most of these innovations are not even being rolled out throughout the country, that still says that there's a lot of gap, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done within supporting SMEs in the township. And given that, what's your take in terms of the support to make sure that these guys become sustainable? Because one challenge that we've seen is great innovation, but it has a short lifespan. And you wonder whether, was it because there was not enough support towards that innovation? So maybe if we can just deep down, double click on that and really understand to say, out of these innovations, how do we make sure that we support these innovations to be more sustainable?
I think we have to maybe appreciate the fact that the township entrepreneurs are self-funding their own innovation. So we also have to not think that they cannot afford or pilot or invest on those innovations. So I think I just want to kind of bring that point across. But if we probably look at, when you're saying some of the innovation are short-lived, I will go back to a sector-focused approach. Because if we probably, this gentleman, for example, we have his production facility being in the township, and let's imagine that things were quite well. We didn't have an issue of electricity, three-phase, and all these kind of things. That means this product will come from the township in terms of manufacturing. It will then deploy into the immediate market, but it also can be exported outside of the market, that is the township. So for me, I think a sector approach, we need to be deliberate in which sectors do we want to focus on, because also, I mean, in the capital markets, you also want to protect your capital. You don't want to make sure that you deploy capital and it sits on the risk there, and then you don't have any return. But there are sectors that have evolved, that are ready for capital, and if capital can be deployed to them, they can address issues of unemployment. Because yes, we have startups, we have those that are in growing stage, but we also have those that are ready to scale. It is where you deploy your capital. If you're deploying it on the startup market with that innovation that hasn't been tested, you need to be aware that through catalytic funding, that could partially be a grant. You are giving them a grant, you are saying, test your model, come up with a case study, and you need to be okay that the amount that you have given them, it's a grant to test the pilot. But in such instances is that entrepreneurs are given that money, and there is no sense of support that assists them, and there's no sense of accountability that they can report to a mentor or a business coach or whoever that it is. So there is those gaps that need to be bridged. But I think mentorship for me It's one of the biggest, interventions. I mean, if we look at, as I've said, the succession plan is mainly an issue. How do you come into a business like Sakums and say, you are scaling, therefore, let's help you to draft a succession plan. Let's help you to bring a board into your organization. Let's begin to formalize you as you scale.
Yeah.
So those are the missing gaps that can be addressed. Let's say, for example, you have a big, and I will refer to hospitality and restaurants because that's what is prominent there. Like a Lokshin Chicken, for example. You could see that they are trying their level best to franchise, and they've already started to sell the model in some of the guys that want that element. And then you realize that, okay, if that's the case, how do we help them with interventions that can tidy up this business and actually make it franchisable, and also work backwards and streamline the value chain and bring processes that can help them to understand how to structure their operation and standardize such things. So there's not and then there is training, of course. We do need a bit of training, but what are we training them on? The issues that mainly appear, there's the costing element and the price structure element. That is the biggest struggle, because the entrepreneurs, you find that it's either they are undercutting themselves, or they are kind of balanced in terms of their price factors. But if you deep dive into this composition of their price structure, you realize that they have missed a lot of things. So cost-benefit analysis is not thoroughly done. And also the principle of business. I think it's very important that your business is a project. You need to project manage it. You need to project manage your cost. Make sure that you record them every day. So it's a culture thing that needs to also be addressed. But I think we have to stop having this monotonous training and interventions all the time and duplicating efforts all the time. And it looks like, and I will sound a bit controversial, but it looks like for corporates, Township becomes a low-hanging fruit because of its popularity, because of the fact that it's a buzzword. And there is no structured approach in designing programs that respond to the temperament of the market itself. And I think it's very important that, we should address issues that we should design programs that are responsive from a sector perspective, but that are responsive to the real challenges and problems. We can't, and I'll say this, we can't help everyone, right? And you would realize that if you have startups in the room and you're saying these are township entrepreneurs, which they are, the cry will be about capital. They would say, we don't have money, but these guys have financed their own businesses. It means that maybe the challenge is not the money. The challenge is, I don't know how to manage this money, and therefore I'm not sure whether I have the great margins for this. But these guys, they have customers. So it tells us that the issue is more operational. If we can fix the operation and then see how they perform, and then come back to them and say, okay, we've fixed the operation, we've fixed the marketing, then let's talk about finance, if finance is really an issue. So there's no blanket approach, but there is, those kind of interventions that can be put in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, very informative. I think, as you are mentioning all the different interventions, what comes to mind is really understanding. When we're talking about township economy, there are so many different sectors that comprises of township economy.
True.
But I think we're still lacking information around which sectors are really, really doing well.
Yeah.
And which sectors are still upcoming that might be a lucrative market.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can be able to share some insights in terms of currently which sectors are lucrative market and also the ones that are upcoming that would properly need some support.
I would look at the property sector mainly the backyard real estate market. There are multiple opportunities there, and there's an opportunity of modular, ABT technology that can potentially be implemented, because we have an issue of because if you look at backyard real estate, let's kind of analyze that part.
Yeah.
Bongane lives in the home. Bongane is now matured, and then Bongane does not need to live in the house anymore. So they have to basically have a back room for Bongane. And then Bongane happens to get a great job, and he buys a house, and then the room remains vacant. And then Makoko finds an opportunity to earn a bit of income there. So if we look at that backyard real estate, we are realizing also that it's a 10 billion rent sector, just from rental. But there's also inputs of material. There's also technology that can be integrated there. And I'll talk simply about a company called Room King. Room King is a tech company that saw an opportunity in the backyard real estate market. They've built a platform like Property 24, where you can go online, look at rooms. They have 165,000 rooms listed there. So there is an opportunity of a technology that can be integrated there. And there is an opportunity of creating point-of-sale systems and things like your QuickBooks that talks primarily around the costing element of a business. So certain sectors that really have a big kind of, I think, imprint from a sustainability standpoint also, since you could see that there are these development goals, the 2031, that we need to meet. Because I think one of the issues for me that I see is that the township economy it's looked at in isolation of the mainstream economy. But the township economy exists in the mainstream economy.
True.
And therefore, if that is the case, for me, I think there are a lot of opportunities that exist in the backyard real estate. There is funding and financing that is available. There is solar. There's a funeral sector that is big, and that spills down to the eventing space. There's an opportunity of manufacturing. And when I talk about the funeral sector, at least there are guys like your Cabo, Tombstone, who are manufacturing in the township, So the hospitality sector is big. There is huge opportunity in the tourism sector. There's also huge opportunities in the construction sector, because there is infrastructure backlog that exists in the township. So such sectors, and then also tech, tech is big. I know guys who've been kind of trying to develop solutions for spaza shops. And also I think we've been working on, I've been working with SPA, and we've been trying to kind of bring a hybrid model of a spaza and an e-commerce store in the township because of last mile delivery opportunities.
Yeah.
And if you look at, issues of saying people in the township, they are not tech savvy. But if you look at how Bolt and Uber are making a lot of money in that market, where parcels are delivered through Uber. And then if you look at Deliver Ka Speed, and you also look at Kasi Delivery, I mean, these guys are focused on the township. So there's also a huge opportunity of last mile delivery that exists there. And if the world is evolving, and if the mainstream economy is evolving, it shouldn't evolve in isolation of the township economy. And therefore, we have to make sure that, we invest in such entrepreneurs. And we have to make sure that, we have a sector-based approach. So, and also when I talk about those, I mean, primarily around the circular economy, how do we introduce those concepts? Because they are there, but they are not clearly defined, and we don't see opportunities. So there is a lot of opportunities also in the recycling sector there.
What do you think the support that the corporates can give to support township SMEs? Because you look at the amount of SMEs that are in the township, you look at the amount of even employees that are working
Yeah.
for the different corporates.
Yeah.
And you also look at what we call enterprise and supplier development that is initiated by corporates.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at all of that, what do you think the corporates can do more to support your township entrepreneurs?
I think it's more about supporting intermediaries,
Mm-hmm.
capacitating intermediaries.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
So
that
can you dive deep into intermediaries? Yeah.
So intermediaries are basically organizations that support SMEs that have a database of entrepreneurs that have categorized them into various sectors, and they are providing support. And I kind of serve as the CEO of one of them, which is called the Township Economy Commission of South Africa. That also has another arm called TechVest, and TechVest looks at the investment element of things. We've got ladies that are doing cement there and multiple businesses. Even this business sits on TechVest. So for me, I think the start needs to be there. You know, let's empower intermediaries first. Let's partner with intermediaries first. Let's capacitate them first so that they become our extension to support SMEs that are in the township. But we can't, and for me, you know, that's my own opinion. I think it becomes a futile exercise if we are working in isolation of intermediaries. I think there should be a pass-throughs that can be deployed to them, and they can then use those to better support SME. I mean, there's a great initiative that happened now on the last week. It was called the Soweto Investment Summit, supported by the city of Johannesburg. I mean, if you look at what that summit is trying to do, I mean, it's trying to attract investment in the township. And why such organizations like Soweto Tourism that is organizing it, including, you know, Texa that is now, you know, working towards what we call Tech G20, because there's that reality that is coming next year. And why aren't they not really collaborating with corporates and are not supported with corporates? We know that they have issues of weak governance, you know, and etc., some of the things, but they understand that market. They know how to address issues in that market. If they can be empowered and if they can, you know, be capacitated, I think that could be the right start. But if we jump them and we go directly to entrepreneurs, we then come back and we say, hey son, you know, here we tried, the intervention is not working. Entrepreneurs in the township, they don't want that support. And if we also look at T, you know, the Township Entrepreneurship Alliance, you see deliberately that Nedbank sponsored, you know, Tia, and they are seeing the results because he works directly with the entrepreneur and he's an intermediary or entrepreneurship support organization that exists in the township. We need to learn from those models. We need to take up those models. But as I've said, you know, low-hanging fruits, succession plan, streamlining of systems. If we have to go to the spaza economy, let's look at how do we help these guys to set up a distribution outlet or a distribution space. It's really about infrastructure and it's really about knowledge. And we can not only impart knowledge by training people and saying, we've trained you, go and do it yourself. In some instances, there's an expertise that needs to be commissioned to really come in and say, okay, how do I help Konala, for example? You know, how do I help Family Tree that are focused on revitalizing township spazas, but the objective is for them to really create, you know, a streamlined distribution. But they are failing because there is no expertise, there is no technology that is integrated to assist them to be able to fulfill those tasks. So for me, I think you have to pick, you need to focus on certain areas, especially business areas. Let's not say training, because everyone is thinking low-hanging fruit training, targeted intervention works. Yeah.
So with that being said, there's also a notion around township economy to say that a lot of SMEs in the township, they are more of startups. You don't find a lot of more established businesses or SMEs in the township.
Yeah.
Do you know, or can you share of any case studies of fully run and well-run successful businesses in the township that we can learn from? Because if you look at our tier, our level of entrepreneurship in South Africa, it's very low, and it's partly because there aren't role models in the township. You get SMEs that would then start businesses, but they fail within their first year. The question is, do we have enough case studies that we can refer to? Do we have enough SMEs that we can look at as role models that specifically are from the township economy?
First one that I can think of, it's a busy corner Shisanyama. I mean, if we look at the fact that they're still in Tembisa, you know, but they've now kind of have a second branch now in Tembisa Mall. And if you look at Umazwane, you know, you realize that so people in the township grows with the brand. They like seeing the story that you started in a small shack, and then you reinvested, now you move from this to here, now you own a fully fledged restaurant. I think they are a lot of them. I mean, your 5-star car wash, I can think of that. Your Sakis, you know, they used to own dry cleaners, they went to malls. And then if you look at them also, they also looked at butcheries that they've, so there is those, you know, your Shabalalas that now have A2 Mall, you know, as a partnership, your Maponyas, your Kutwanons who did Moja Cafe, you know, we do have people that we are looking up to. But also remember, when I started, I said that we are either a first or second generation of entrepreneurs. And also, if we look at the index that looks at global entrepreneurship participation, we are very low because we are not in a culture of trading. It is only now where 10 years, I'm sure you've been in this space for the past probably 15 years, and you have seen its evolution. I think the good thing that we need to take out from this is that at least people are starting. At least there is participation now. And if there is participation, it means that we are moving in the right direction. Maybe we might not realize the inspiring stories as yet, but if we give it probably another 10 years from the very same entrepreneurs, we will see, you know, a new kind of breed of people. And also, I think another thing that I'm kind of thinking about is that, you know, if we look at the TIDA Act, it talks a lot about what we call enterprise zones and precincts. And for example, that's a project that I want to do in Vosloorus, where there's a hub there called the Box Shop, where I want to really change that space or that entire space into a precinct. It is palatable, or it's kind of favorable because it has, you know, some accommodation spaces there, and there's a stretch of businesses that exist there. And if we can kind of, you know, renovate that space, I don't think that the inspiration needs to come at you looking up to an entrepreneur. But I guess also the environment needs to trigger the inspiration, because if you pass into a precinct environment that does not look, that looks quite nice and well packaged, you get to be inspired just by that. And then when you start poking, whether you are a young kid, and you realize that this place actually, it's a hub for entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of that is required. I mean, when we did the box shop, when we did Vilakazi Street and we tested the pilot out, what inspired a lot of people was just the infrastructure that was there. It basically made people who are not even in business to come in and say, I want to be in business. What can I do? It means that we have sparked some kind of inspiration to them. So your Mamritas are championing it, your Sakumzis are championing it, your Butsipos are championing it, Of course, the guys that are in the taxi space, you know, them kunus, are championing it because they are scaling up by reinvesting in petrol station, in some retail, but they started out with a fleet of 2 taxis. They are now in 10 taxis. And we've seen new taxi owners coming up, also starting out with the taxi. Now they own a fleet of 10 taxis. It's because maybe the sector is not regulated that much, and there's a lot of, you know, mafia, you know, style of operating it in terms of route. But I mean, there are inspiration stories that we've just recently seen where a new garage, you know, or a petrol station has been opened that is owned by a taxi association. So there is those stories that are there, but I think we can't pinpoint directly into an entrepreneur because also we are kind of trying to burden them with a lot of things. So it's a kind of a balanced approach where we have to develop spaces like Vilakazi, for example. If a person walks into Vilakazi Street and looks at it, and then he comes from Sebokeng, they go back there at Sebokeng and say, we can do something like this here. You know, so there are a lot of opportunities. If we look at Vosloorus, the Katoras area, there's a strong opportunity of tourism there. And I'm talking about it because we've tested it out. It had a cascading effect. There are BNBs that are there that we supported by bringing a crowd of photographers, of journalists. So we brought about 20 journalists through a short left done by the Department of Tourism in Gauteng, where they wanted us to host these journalists, and they wanted to profile our precinct. And that necessitated that we should build a tourism route. And we realized that Qatar is on its own. I mean, the Kumalo Street, where the atrocities of the 1990s happened, there's a monument there, there's a Chris Hani house there, and it was just a 45 minutes drive. And then on the stops, we had various enterprises that we visited, and we also bought gifts from them. So it tells us that, I mean, you know, there's a guy that owns a company, a restaurant called Burger King. For me, I think he sells one of the best, not Burger King, it's called Burger Yard, sorry. I think he sells one of the best burgers. He's a chef. And he just, you know, set himself up in a small garage there. Those are businesses for me that I see that if you invest money on them, you can create a franchise out of them. So if we're able to kind of create a tourism route there, and through the touring and using bicycles that we hired through another entrepreneur, people were just getting inspired, seeing that happening. So there should be those kind of activities, because the township is always plagued with negativity that is attached to it. And people are trying to survive all the time, so they don't have the time to look at who's inspiring us, who's not inspiring us. But if we can turbocharge the environment and try to basically create a new perspective out of it and a new image out of it, we can inspire the masses.
There's a lot that we've learned ourselves as Edge in terms of the work that's being done in the township. Do you have any closing remarks?
I don't really have the closing remarks, but all I can say is the township is really a gold mine, and it depends on how we look at the perspective, or we need to have perspective first of all. But it is a gold mine because there's a lot of untapped opportunities that exist there. And I think, you know, there is a strong opportunity for corporate to come in, not with the intention of profit all the time, but with a clear intention of saying, we want to develop this market or this environment. And I think also, I just want to put this point across, that the township is not the spaza economy, guys. That's not what the township is. And our narrative is skewed because it is driven by marketers who work for these, who work with FMCG market, and who will push that narrative, of course, for their own benefit. But I think we have to kind of zoom out a bit and don't focus a lot on spazas. And if we are going to spazas, let's try to have meaningful interventions, not creating an opportunity to drive or to push product in that market. And for me, I think there is a strong role that private sector needs to play in capacitating intermediaries. And I think if there could be a starting point, we could be able to achieve what we ought to achieve with what government has put for us, which is the Township Economy Development Act. I mean, the township is the only economy that has a policy. So that's a plus for us because we have to design programs that talk to policy. That if we just design a program and not refer to the policy, for me, I think as Dewa Group, because that's also a consultancy firm that I run, as Dewa Group, one of the things that I focus on when I'm designing program intervention, I always refer to the TIDA Act, and hence, the Vosloorus Boulevard, it's mainly addressing issues of precinct and issues of enterprise zone, and if you read the Act, you will find that those are priority areas. So to create alignment, let's further study the Act. I mean, what are also other opportunities, just as a last point, is that on the Act itself, government has kind of put aside about 40% of their procurement spend. They want to give it to township businesses. The township businesses are not ready in terms of capacity. That is an opportunity and a gold mine, because they are saying, if we do that, Baragwanath Hospital, they are looking to launch a pharmacy, they are looking to launch a bank, and they are saying, from a pharmacy level, the logistics element will need to be given to small businesses that are in the township. And that is legislated, and it is already there. But the guys are not ready. Hence I'm saying, intermediaries, you support them with an intention to say, let's make sure that we bring these guys to be ready, and let's make sure that the 40%, which is in the tune of billions, these guys can be able to access it. Because, we'll always have the narrative to say, the townships, businesses are not ready, but if there's an opportunity, that means we are building them for something that they'll be able to access. And I think that should be the thinking. But yeah, those are my parting words. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the chat and the questions that you have asked, and I hope I was able to kind of provide some sense of clarity, and I've been able to kind of give you a perspective of the insiders.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Moyo, for a very insightful discussion. You've given us a lot to chew, and we wish you all the best of luck with all the initiatives that you're currently busy with. I think we'll continue having conversations and see where we can collaborate and work together in some of the initiatives. So with that being said, it brings us to the end of our segment. Thank you for joining us and for listening through. Catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.